Hi, welcome to my channel, The Pink Trellis. I'm Gina. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. A big part of being a plant parent or collecting plants involves a bit of dirty work. So today I wanted to talk about soil and what I use and in what combination of ingredients I use to make my soil. I personally have a DIY soil mixture for my Hoyas, and then I have a separate mixture I make for my succulents. But today we're just going to take a look at my DIY mix for the Hoyas. I find it really enjoyable to make my soil mixture. It reminds me a lot of baking, where you have a certain amount of ingredients that you have to add, and it's so much of this and so much of this, and it's just a really relaxing thing for me to do. So for my Hoyas, I use a really chunky mixture. So the first ingredient I add to my DIY soil mix is soil. And my preferred brand is the Fox Farm Ocean Forest potting soil. It's a little bit more expensive than some of the others that you would find at a big box store, but I usually buy the big giant bags, which usually saves me a little bit of money. So the next ingredient that I like to add is orchid bark, which is probably the ingredients I use the most of in my ratio, which I don't really have a particular ratio. I just kind of eyeball it and see what looks right to me. So I like to find orchid bark that isn't super large chunks, and that's kind of hard to do sometimes, but I have been able to find it locally and also online. And so my current one is this Fertilome orchid mix. So the reason I like to use orchid bark is because it keeps the mix light and less compacted, which allows for air circulation around the roots. So one of the other ingredients I like to add is charcoal. So the reason I use charcoal is because it speeds the drainage and it inhibits bacteria and fungal development, and it also allows for good airflow. So therefore it's a really good option and a really good ingredient to add to your DIY soil mixes. The next ingredient I like to add is pumice or perlite. And I prefer actually the pumice, and I don't have a brand name on this one. I picked it up online. I put it in this container, so I'm not sure who makes it, but for me, it's been difficult to find this locally, and I've only been able to get it online. And I'll also use perlite if I run out of the pumice, and that's really easy to find locally. I did find this giant bag of perlite locally, and it has a really good grain size. It's not super tiny. So when I found that, I was like, well, I'll have a big bag and it'll last me forever. So the reason I use pumice or perlite is because it absorbs excess moisture and it improves aeration in the soil. I prefer pumice because for a couple reasons. It's heavier, so when you water your plant over time, it's not gonna float up to the top of the pot like perlite can. And also it's less dusty than perlite. It's still dusty, but not quite as bad as the perlite. Like even right now, after touching the perlite, I feel like I have to cough, and it's very uncomfortable for me. And also for my cats, it actually makes them sneeze a lot. The downside to pumice is that it's, like I said before, it's harder to find locally, and it's also more expensive. Perlite is a cheaper option, And it works great. Perlite works great. It's just, personally for me, I prefer the pumice for the reasons I mentioned previously. The final ingredient I like to add to my DIY soil mixture is worm castings. And I use this brand. It's called Dr. Worm's Premium Worm Castings. And I did purchase this online through Amazon. But funny enough, well, I'm almost out of this, so I was needing to order more. But yesterday I took a trip to my local garden center and I found this giant 10-pound bag of worm castings. This is, I'm not sure the brand, maybe Soil Mender. But I got this big 10-pound bag for $25.98, which I think is a pretty good price. I think I remember paying a lot for this one, and this is just 2 pounds. The reason I add the worm castings to my DIY soil mix is it's a fertilizer, and it's actually worm poop. It's a little bit more expensive option as a fertilizer, but I just love having that natural ingredient added to my soil mix. I showed you everything that goes into my mix, and now let's go mix it up. I have everything gathered together that I'm going to need to mix my soil. I have my orchid bark, worm castings, pumice, and I'm going to probably need extra worm castings, so I brought my big bag. This is my mixing bucket I use to put everything in. It's nice and big and deep to really get in there and mix things up really well. I also have this other bag of orchid mix, and this is just strictly orchid bark. And then if I do end up using that, I will add the charcoal to it since my other orchid mix already comes with the charcoal added. So I haven't decided yet which orchid mix I'm going to be using. I thought I'd show you guys what this one looks like inside. I'll show you what the other one looks like as well, but you can see some little chunks and some big chunks. I'll probably just end up using the pre-mixed stuff because it's just easier. It's ready to go, and I don't have to mix in the charcoal separately. This stuff is really dirty, but I'll show you what that looks like as well. So it's real smoky smelling. It's just some charcoal chips. Nice chunks of it, not too big, not too small. And this is my big bag of the Fox Farms soil. It's the Ocean Forest. So I already put some of the soil into the container, and now I'm going to start adding the other ingredients. So we have our orchid bark, which already has some charcoal mixed in it. And I'll show you an up close of what this charcoal, or this orchid bark looks like. You can see there's lava rock here. These are the charcoal, or the orchid bark. And the charcoal chip. So this nice sizes of orchid bark, not too big. They're nice. This is the ideal size. I'm also going to add some of this other orchid bark in. So we do have a good amount of orchid bark in there. Then we'll add some of the pumice. And then finally, we'll add in our worm castings. This is our fertilizer. There's not much left in the bag, so I'm going to add the rest of it. And I may end up adding some of the new one to it as well. So this is what it looks like before mixing. It's nice to have a big, deep container so you can just really get in there and mix things up and not worry about it getting all over the place. All right, so you can really see just how chunky this mixture is. And it's so good for your Hoyas because it provides so much good aeration around the roots, and it will help so that your plants don't get root rot, because nobody likes root rot. And that's my mix. Isn't it yummy? Chunky. I went ahead and mixed up more of my DIY soil mix, filled it almost to the top, or closer to the top, because I go through so much soil, and I figured since I have this freshly mixed Hoya soil mix of mostly orchid bark, and then soil, pumice, charcoal, and worm castings, I have one plant that I do need to pot up, so I figured why not pot it up right now? So let's do that. So the plant that I'm going to be potting up is this Hoya incrusata albomarginata. And I got this one a couple of weeks ago, and I believe that I unboxed it for you guys back then. So I wanted to let it acclimate for a couple of weeks before potting it up, and it's ready. And look, it even has a new leaf. So I'm going to be putting it into this terracotta pot. So I went ahead and cut this little guard for the bottom of for the drain hole so that the soil doesn't leak through when I put it in. Got our chunky, fresh new soil mix. I don't want to disturb it too much, so I'm going to leave some of the soil with it so I don't stress it out too much. It's always so nice to have some fresh soil made. Have a big box of it ready for the next time. Then I'll probably get a trellis, stick it on there, attach it. Actually, I am gonna get a trellis. Be right back. So I have my favorite trellis to use, and stick it right there. I have my little clips. I think they're like called butterfly clips. They're mostly for orchids, but they work great for Hoyas as well. Clip this to the trellis like that, and it's done. I hope you enjoyed seeing what my DIY soil mix recipe looks like and the ingredients I like to use and the reasons why I use them. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!